All right, everybody, welcome back to a bar chart live. We are back live here. I'm Aaron Bree. We're doing something a little bit differently today where we're bringing you an exciting publicly traded company to learn more about them and what they're doing. And I'm lucky to be joined here by Russell Starr, the head of capital markets for DeFi Technologies. Russell, how are you doing today?
Doing really well, Aaron. How about yourself, man?
I'm good, man. Just recovering from the chicken wing induced hangover from the Super Bowl a couple days ago.
The right team won, though.
The right team won. Yeah. Well, I mean, hey, look, I'm actually from Missouri, not the
Yep,
Kansas City side, the St. Louis side, but I'm not
yep.
a big Chiefs fan, so I wasn't too sad to see them lose. But what about you? Did you watch the game?
Oh yeah, no. For me, it was more. I just wanted to see Saquon win a ring. He's such a class act, and just it was. Honestly, I didn't think it was going to be that much of a destruction. Like that was one of the most lopsided victories I've ever seen in a Super Bowl. Like it was, uh, like in every facet of the game, they just crushed them. So
Yeah, and I mean, that wasn't the only fun thing you've been up to. You were skiing the other day, right?
yeah. Well, trying to. It's I was in Alberta. I'm from Calgary originally. We do an annual boys ski trip, but it was like 30 below. Not a lot of snow, so not the greatest skiing. Ironically, I think Ontario probably has more snow than Alberta right now, which is crazy.
Yeah, well, yeah, you're Canadian. You should be able to handle the -30, right?
No,
No, doesn't work like that.
the Canadian doesn't work with minus 30. That's a misnomer, man. Minus 30
Um,
is cold everywhere.
so let's hop into it, Russell. I'm
Yeah.
excited, and I know our audience is excited here to learn more about DeFi. What is it that Let's just start with like a high level overview of the company. What do you guys do?
Look, we're an ETF provider, so we're the world's leading ETF provider in the crypto space. So when everybody thinks IBIT, BlackRock's Bitcoin ETF product, we actually have 60 of those trading in Europe already. Now, obviously, not all Bitcoin, but Cardano, Sui, um, go on Toncoin. So legitimately, we are the world's leader in crypto ETFs. But the other thing that's quite crazy about us, if you can call it that, is that we're extremely profitable as well. And so, you've kind of been existing in this crypto universe where the majority of investors really only had one or two options, and it was the miners, right? So you had Hive, which was, call it a proxy for Ethereum, and then you had the other miners like Hut 8 and Riot, whatnot, who were Bitcoin miners, and that was how institutions could play this crypto trade. Now you've got ETFs, you've got a bunch of other stuff, and the miners are now mostly AI, HPC type plays, high performance computing. We, on the other hand, DeFi Technologies, we basically stake all of our underlying assets. So, we currently have $1 billion US in AUM. We make 100 million US off of that, and it only costs us about 10 million bucks to run the company. So, we should be reporting a really, really, really good 2024, somewhere in the realm of maybe 190, 195 million Canadian in revenues and 160 million in net income. And legitimately, there's almost no one else in the ecosystem that's doing those type of profit margins.
Yeah, that's incredible. And I mean, just backing up for a second here. I mean,
Yep.
say I'm a, investor that's never touched crypto. I'm trying to get exposure for the first time. What would be the benefits of going through a publicly traded company? Whether that be a miner, or whether that be something like a DeFi technology, as opposed to just buying those cryptos outright.
Well, what we've figured out, so the two founders of this company, Ollie Rusi Newton, he was the founder of Hive Blockchain, and the reason he created Hive was to give people a proxy for owning crypto without actually having to own crypto in a traditional equity sense. Since then, you've seen a lot of other companies be created, a lot of other miners be created, but you've also experienced a lot of fraud, a lot of theft, a lot of bankruptcies that have been associated with, call it the more unregulated side of the market. The FTX debacle, of course, would be a big one. When you actually look at a company like DeFi, you're buying a traditional equity that's an umbrella, and it covers 60 ETPs, but 60 different crypto protocols. So you actually don't even have to pick a winner. You actually can effectively get broad-based exposure to Bitcoin, Ethereum, and then all these altcoins. And that's what I think is the key differentiator for DeFi. You can do these on traditional exchanges, which is what people want, right? Like you don't have to open a wallet. You don't have to have, be on an on-ramp. You don't have to have USDT to buy Bitcoin or Bitcoin to buy Solana or whatever it breaks out of. You can actually just go in, buy this company, and you get a diversified play on effectively 60 altcoin and Bitcoin products. And we're going to be launching another 40. So pretty soon we'll have 100. So it's by far the best and most diversified way to play this entire ecosystem.
Yeah, and what I think is really interesting about that is you just mentioned, the kind of the altcoins, or I think
Yep.
at this point, because for a while it was really hard to buy any crypto, even
Yep.
Bitcoin or Ethereum. Now that's become a little bit easier to buy Bitcoin and Ethereum. I mean, still not the easiest thing in the world, but at
No.
least that part. But when you start getting into some of these altcoins, I'll see some and people are talking about it. I'm like, okay, yeah, I'll throw $100 in that. And then by the
Yep.
time I even figure out how to try to get money into it, it's like,
Yep.
too late, or I just am like, screw
Yep.
it. There's too many steps. So, I think right now we're seeing this cycle where there's been a lot of attention and a lot of investor interest in altcoins or meme coins, whatever you want to call it. So
Yep.
how do investors get exposure to that market if they just go buy a DeFi stock?
Well, if you were to look, like if I had my deck up here, you'd see of the 60 ETPs we have, probably 10 of them are Bitcoin and Ethereum related. So if you take those 10 off, the other 50 are altcoin ETPs. So whether that's Sui, whether that's Toncoin, whether that's Cardano, Aave, Polkadot, that's the other 50 of what we're carrying. And so even a lot of people who are listening here know that Pomp is a shareholder. One of the reasons Pomp took shares rather than cash when we bought Reflexivity, which was his research company, is because he views this as the best and single best way of playing the altcoin market. And you're seeing these other companies emerge, whether they're buying Solana and holding it on their balance sheet, or they're buying Bitcoin or some of these other crypto plays and just holding it on their balance sheet and then just trying to get a multiple off of that. We actually have that. We have close to 100 million in our treasury strategy, which is in Bitcoin, Solana, Core, and some of these other really cool prototypes or protocols. And then we also have this incredible business, which is growing and expanding globally, which I mentioned to you, right now at $1 billion in AUM, we do 100 million. At 2 billion, we do 200 million. At 3 billion, we do 300 million. And the way I'm kind of guiding people for this year is, look, we're looking at 3 new jurisdictions: Middle East, Africa, Asia, and there's a ton more jurisdictions, right? We could be expanding this in Latin America, Canada, US. We just want to see a little bit more of what the regulations are going to be like in Canada and the US. But if we just launch 50 products of the 100 we're going to have here in the next quarter, in 3 jurisdictions, and they only get 20 million in each of them, that's another billion in each of those jurisdictions. Or we're on a run rate of 400 million US for this year, and probably 350 million or 330 million in pure profit. So if you look at our market cap right now to what I'm guiding you to, we're only trading at 3 times, 2 times earnings. And that is absolutely bonkers, right? And that's something to do with the Canadian market, but it's also to do with just a general malaise and lack of effort on the part of institutions and retail to actually understand what's going on with our business.
Yeah, and I've got some of those, fundamentals and numbers pulled up right here on the
Yeah,
Bar Chart Premier
yeah,
platform. But yeah, I mean, you can see just in the stock chart, like a lot of excitement, obviously, since the election, which is kind of like right where my cursor's at right now.
yep,
On
yep,
early November, it was trading around $2.50. Now we're up to $3.20. I mean,
yep.
what has the last couple months been like in the industry, Russell? Just because I'm sure there's been so much excitement and people just really ready to see how this administration ushers in, I guess, kind of the next
Yeah.
era of crypto.
Well, and you and I were talking about this ahead of time. So I'm an ex Insti salesperson, ex Insti trader, corporate finance guy. Um, what people don't understand is there's no real reason for Trump to go, I'm starting a Bitcoin treasury strategy right now, because the minute he does that, he's going to send the price of Bitcoin, through the roof. If I'm a smart business person, which David Sachs, Trump, Elon Musk, all of these guys are extremely sophisticated business people. I'm actually buying Bitcoin right now quietly. I'm buying Ethereum quietly. I'm buying Solana quietly, because the minute that they go, yep, we've implemented this treasury strategy, which you're seeing Senator Loomis, push for at the Congress level with a bipartisan bill. But the minute that goes live, you're looking at $150,000, $200,000 Bitcoin, and you've basically shot yourself in the foot. So if I'm all of these guys, I'm doing this quietly, and I'm starting to accumulate Bitcoin on any weakness, and then I'm announcing the treasury strategy.
Got it. So you think there could be some of this kind of behind the scene buying going on before they make these announcements, which could be the next like bullish catalyst for the overall crypto industry?
100%.
Which
That's what
is
I would
that's
do.
so interesting because, for stocks, there are all these, regulations and they have to disclose certain things. But for crypto, in a lot of ways, we're starting to see more regulation. But
Yep.
in some ways, it still is more of the, quote unquote, Wild West compared to stocks, to where you could actually see something like that happen, like politicians but
Yep.
buying Bitcoin behind the scene in this anticipation of something they know is about to happen, but we don't know when that's being announced.
Oh yeah. Well, but like the whole reason you buy equities, in my opinion, is it's not because you want to gamble. You want to buy an equity because there's catalysts and reasons for that equity to go higher. And all I'm saying to you and your listening audience is, this is accumulation time. You don't want to be sitting on the sidelines waiting for the announcement, because the minute the announcement happens, everything's, going parabolic. Right now, what you want to be doing is, picking up DeFi ahead of our annual, our Q1 and our Q4. And you want to be basically building a position into what, like, everybody has already said it in the US. We're going to have a crypto treasury strategy. They just haven't formally announced it. And so, to me, this is one of the easiest trades I've seen in decades. They're giving you the signals. Start buying, start accumulating. The challenge is that, like I said before, 99% of the world has basically only been investing in miners. And miners aren't profitable. It's an extremely cost intensive business. And then you have this new company, DeFi Technologies. First of all, we're listed in Canada. Now we are making an application to uplist to the NASDAQ. And given what we're hearing from this new administration, we're very, very confident that we're going to get that uplist. And of course, that's always under the discretion and the purview of the SEC. But the SEC is now a very different SEC than it was before. But if you can actually pick up a company trading at 2-3 times this year's earnings on a Canadian exchange, and we do trade in the US with some good liquidity under DEFTF, into a NASDAQ uplist, typically you see companies double or triple when they get on the NASDAQ. But with our earnings profile, this could be, there's portfolio managers. There's a guy named Eric Jackson who's on CNBC all the time that thinks this is a $30, $40 stock. Northland just put out a really great research piece. Mike Rondell, this is institutional research, and he's like, look, if these guys can execute on just a fraction of their international growth strategy, this is a $17 stock. So people are slowly starting to figure it out. It's just, you got to meet with an institution 3 or 4 times. They want to do their own due diligence. They want to read their research, but 98% of the world right now doesn't have exposure to this ecosystem. So if just 10% of the world gets into this space, you're going to see companies like DeFi, Robinhood, Coinbase, Galaxy, all of these companies are going to be trading at many, many, many multiples higher. We just happen to be profitable, which is, a really big differentiator in this ecosystem.
So you basically, we've been over that the valuation for DeFi is below industry average, meaning
Yep.
that, DeFi can be considered fundamentally undervalued,
Yep.
and it's profitable. And you have, these industry wide catalysts on the horizon,
Yep.
like the, US strategic reserve, or, policies they're getting ready to enact. And then you also have the company specific catalysts, like getting ready to uplist to the NASDAQ. So it seems like, uh, you know, obviously we're not making any investment advice or anything like that, but at the very least, it seems like a very interesting time for the company, and something that a lot of investors should at least maybe start paying more attention to.
I Yes. We've got the Nasdaq uplist. We've announced the spinning out of a really cool MicroStrategy esque like company called CoreFi, with the Core Foundation, and Core and Sui are kind of like my two top picks in these this year for these altcoins. And we're going to be doing more and more of these MicroStrategy like type plays as well, where we at DeFi create another SpinCo. We work with Core, the foundation. They seed it with Core tokens, and then we do a financing, not within DeFi. This is a financing of a brand new company that just holds Core and continues to reinvest in Core. And there's a couple of companies in Canada. HODL's one of them, and Neptune's another. They're trading at like 400, 500 times revenues. We're trading at like 2 or 3 times revenues, and we have the treasury strategy that they have. So if you start layering in Nasdaq uplist, CoreFi, 40 new ETFs coming, launching new products globally. That's London, Middle East, Africa, Asia. Things start to get really, really interesting. And then, of course, you also add in this amazing macro backdrop, which is a Trump administration that is admittedly very, very bullish and gung ho on crypto. All of that math is there for people. It's really weird here in Canada. The Canadian banks won't let you buy crypto or hold it in. Canada is one of the most backwards jurisdictions I've ever seen. The U.S. was really backwards, but at least they've come to their senses and recognize just how valuable this ecosystem is. You know, 98% of the world not touching this space. Next year is going to be 80%. The following year, it's going to be 60%. And all of these companies are going to be far higher. And quite frankly, I think because of how cheap DeFi is right now, we make for a very interesting takeout target as well. Just because we're only trading at 2-3 times earnings. It's crazy.
Yeah, I was going to ask about that actually in a little bit, but I was also curious about, just in general, something that I've found interesting about the crypto industry is that in most industries, business leaders, if anything, are pushing for deregulation or less
Yep.
regulations. And what's interesting is in crypto, you've actually had a lot of executives, Brian Armstrong from Coinbase, asking for more regulation, or at least to get some more clarity on certain things. And I guess, like, I'm just curious, from your point of view, like, what would the ideal regulatory landscape look like here in the U.S.?
Look, that's a very big question. Um, I I would say what I would like to see is just simplicity. These are not equities, they're not securities, they're commodities. These should all be regulated by the CFTC. You had a world where basically the SEC wasn't doing its job. It took over a whole other new line of business, which was basically making it a nightmare for any company to list on the Nasdaq or in the US if you were a crypto company. Really, what the SEC's job is just to make sure that you're basically fulfilling all your regulatory obligations in whatever jurisdiction you're in, and as long as you're not doing anything untoward, and you've got a valid board and you're filing all your annual financial statements, you should theoretically be able to uplist to the Nasdaq. So the long-winded answer to that is simplicity. Look, like this doesn't have to be complicated. Look at what Europe's done. Look at what the rest of the world's doing. This is an ecosystem that the US should be involved in. Typically, the US is the market leader when it comes to new technologies and evolving technologies. This has been one of those rare instances where government in the US has just messed this up so badly that the rest of the world has had a huge head start. And similarly in Canada, it's even worse. Our regulators are I'm not really sure what they're thinking, because now that Trump has gone basically bullish on the sector, it's pretty much nonsensical for Canada to not follow suit.
Yeah, and I think that's something that you see in various industries, is that when the U.S. makes a decision or starts regulating something some way, other countries tend to follow suit. So I think seeing the U.S. get a little bit more open to crypto adoption will then inevitably lead to more global adoption. That's what you said earlier.
Yep,
About 98% of the world isn't touching crypto now. That's only going to change, and crypto usage worldwide will increase going forward. So, going back to, just because I was going to ask about it, and then you mentioned it before I could,
yep,
the possibility of a takeover. Because when I was
yep.
looking at the numbers, that was something that stood out to me. What do you like? What type of company do you think would be interested in DeFi as a takeover? Would it be like a Coinbase, a Robinhood, or where do you think that becomes the most interesting?
Look, because of how cheap it is and how much money it's making, and the altcoin nature of it. And I don't want anyone assuming that like this is me speculating. This is
Right.
not me, like there's no inside information here. This is just me, you know, what would I do if I was Mike Novogratz? What would I do if I was, CEO of Robinhood and I had more cash than I knew what to do with? I'd be looking for businesses that are cash flowing, uber profitable, and trading at really cheap multiples. And so you nailed. I quite honestly, Galaxy would be one, Coinbase would be one, Robinhood would be one. Monex out of Japan made a play for 3IQ. They would be another one. This is a company that it's so frustrating because all of the research is there, all of the math is there, and yet here we are still trading at these cheap multiples, especially going into what's going to be a really really strong Q4, a really 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 strong Q1, and then probably an epic annual for last year. The math's all there. You just have to do it yourself. And when you put all those pieces together, plus the potential for some sort of a takeout, just given how cheap the company's trading, it you're dotting all the i's, you're crossing all the t's for kind of a really 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 easy justification to start buying DeFi shares and putting them in your portfolio.
I couldn't agree more. And I mean, it's one of those things where if it looks like everything, is good fundamentally, and then you know that there's that potential for a takeover, but you're confident as an investor that, hey, even if there isn't a takeover, the numbers are so good that the investment
Yeah,
should do well anyway, then like that's like that to me, then I'm like, okay, this is a great opportunity. It's a win-win. Um, but yeah, I mean, I think that makes sense to me. I know Robinhood has seen with its own company the power that altcoins and crypto
yeah,
can have. I mean, a few years ago, I remember, I mean, Robinhood stock has gone through some crazy swings, but I remember in like 2021, the stock skyrocketed and then it came down because the quarter after they were basically like, oh yeah, that last quarter all of our growth and all the money we made was from Dogecoin. And then
yeah,
once
yeah.
Dogecoin cooled off a little bit, Robinhood lost a lot of its profits, so they're like, shoot, we got to find the next Dogecoin. So Robinhood has actually now become quicker to list some of these altcoins and stuff. So I could see them being definitely interested in a company like DeFi that allows them to get some exposure to that industry.
Yeah, well, and I mentioned Sui to you in Core. Our
Yeah.
Sui product, that's our fastest growing product ever. So we have the third largest Solana fund in the world. A lot of people don't know that. We have Solana in our treasury strategy, and then we have a ton of Solana in our Solana ETP. So if you kind of look at HODL, which is the MicroStrategy like Canadian company that's holding hodling Solana, we have 10 times the amount of Solana they have that we're
Wow.
generating staking yield off of, right? So it's but the reason I'm giving you this metric is Solana was, a tiny fund 3 years ago. We might have had 7 million bucks in it. Sui, which we launched maybe 6, 7, 8 weeks ago, we're at almost at 100 million US in it. It's been one of our fastest growing ETPs. So you end up in this situation, and this is another reason why DeFi is really compelling from an investment perspective. You actually don't have to pick the winner because we have 60 ETPs now. We're going to have 100. Somewhere in that 100, you're going to have a winner. It's going to be a Sui. It's going to be the next Solana. I'm not smart enough to do that myself, and quite frankly, I like the diversified nature of what DeFi brings to the table because you're not just leaning on Bitcoin, you're not just leaning on Ethereum, you're not just leaning on Solana. You've got all these other products as well. But who is the next winner? And the only analogy I can give is, and people used to give me grief about this, but it's kind of like the internet, right? Like we didn't know which browser was going to be the winner. We didn't know, if I had come to you and said, hey man, there's this really cool opportunity. This guy is boxing up stuff in his dad's garage and then he's sending it out all over the world. You would have laughed at me. And now, Amazon is one of the biggest, most powerful companies in the world. So there's going to be M&A all over the place in this ecosystem. There's going to be huge growth. There's going to be opportunities, in my opinion, and these are life-altering opportunities. The other thing I should mention too is management insiders and friends own about 150 million shares of our company. So you're actually talking to a management team that really, really, really is aligned with shareholders. But yeah, this is, Trump's going to make it exciting regardless, but just from a pure finance perspective and crypto, this is probably going to be the most interesting year, the most interesting next 2 quarters of crypto's very, very short lifespan thus far.
Yeah, and I'm stoked to be able to, cover it in this space, to follow
Yeah,
stories like DeFi. And I think, at the very least, we will not be short of, catalysts and news stories and things to
no,
follow as this
no,
administration starts rolling stuff out. Um, but Russell, this has been a great conversation. We're coming up on
yeah,
time here, but I just want to recap some of the top points that we hit on today. I mean, for DeFi technologies specifically, we looked at the numbers, uh, you know, uh, undervalued fundamentally, and definitely, undervalued when you're looking at industry standards, or how
yeah,
other companies in the industry are valued. You've got, a lot of potential bullish catalysts on the horizon, both industry wide with
Yep.
things like, the US adopting a strategic reserve or some
Yep.
sort of policy around crypto. Then you have
NASDAQ uplist.
Yep,
Yeah.
NASDAQ uplist, the company-specific catalysts, as well as, potentially down the road, we don't know, but potentially down the road, maybe some takeover conversations as well. All of these things together in congruence, I mean, it seems pretty, again, like we're not giving any investment advice, but it seems like something that, people like me should be keeping their eye on here, DeFi Technologies.
Definitely. And if you pull up that the basically you just had sort of the synopsis. So scroll down to 11.69, our price to earnings. Nope, you just had it there. That price to earnings is only off of our first 3 quarters. That doesn't even include Q4. So we're trading at an earnings multiple of 11 times our first 3 quarters. Our fourth quarter is going to be our biggest quarter, in my opinion. So, you know, we're even trading at sub 10 times last year's numbers, and normally companies trade looking forward, right? Like this is just it's one of the only times I've seen a company where the revenues and the profits have outgrown and grown faster than the market cap on a relative basis. It's crazy.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
Well, like I said, Russell, I'm now personally, adding this to my watch list and going to be
Yeah.
checking it out. And I know, some people in the audience probably are as well. And we'll have to bring you back on at some point in the next few
Anytime.
months, just to, get to catch up and hear kind of the updates on some of these things we've talked about. Because I have no doubt that you guys are going to be making some more waves and doing some more cool things here in the next few months, next few quarters.
Love to be back. Really appreciate you having us on, even just this one time, Aaron, but would love to come back anytime.
Yeah, well, of course, Russell, thank you again for coming on. It's been a great conversation. And thank you to everyone who tuned in as well. We're going to be trying to doing these a little bit more regularly, where we bring you
Yep.
guys some cool companies to talk to and check out. So thank you again to everyone who tuned in. Hope you have a great day, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks, everyone.